advertise this more.
All right, let's get going.
Okay. So I want to just start about the 9 days. It's interesting. How do I get rid of this? Got it. Okay. In the 9 days, in Halacha, nothing happened in 9 days. No Shivas and Tammuz, there were 5 things that happened. The 9 days in Rosh Chodesh Av, in things like that don't happen. Even the Gemara in Tainus says, Mishenichdas Av, Memata B'Simcha. When Av begins, we lower our Simcha. It's time of less Simcha. We'll discuss that in a few seconds. One thing we know that happened in Rosh Chodesh Av was Aaron HaKohen died. And I don't know how many people know this, but in the entire Tanakh, there was only one yahrzeit that's listed clearly in the Psukim. Do you know that? The entire Tanakh. It's only Aaron HaKohen. It's an interesting idea. And the different people say different pshatim. One pshat, and I want to tie it into the 9 days, is that Aaron HaKohen was a very special person. He was Ohev Shalom. The Mishnah says Ohev Shalom, Rodev Shalom. He loved peace and he ran after peace. And he would make peace between husband and wife and between people who are fighting with each other. That's what he did. So the Torah records his yahrzeit as a very special yahrzeit. There's a but Rosh Chodesh Av you could fast because it's Aaron HaKohen's yahrzeit. But I think we could tie it into the 9 days very, very much. The whole, and there was, we know the Churban Bayis Sheni, the Bayis Sheni was destroyed because of Sinas Chinam. And I think the reason that Aaron HaKohen's yahrzeit stands out is to teach us that really, if you want to rebuild the Beis Hamikdash, then you start with Sinas Chinam. And you know, if you learn, everyone Sefer Chavetz Chaim says Sinas Chinam was the cause. Lashon Hara was part of it. Was the cause of the Churban. If we don't work on making that better, getting rid of Lashon Hara, getting rid of Sinas Chimas, we won't build the Bayis. We won't build the Bayis Shlishi. So it's only with Avram with Aaron HaKohen's Midah. Aaron HaKohen's Midah of Ohev Shalom, Rodev Shalom. That's how we're gonna rebuild the Beis Hamikdash. And the 9 days starts with a reminder. Aaron HaKohen's yahrzeit is reminding us, and the only yahrzeit that we know about in the entire Tanakh is Aaron HaKohen's yahrzeit, is to tell us, is to remind us, you want to rebuild the Beis Hamikdash, start being an Ohev Shalom and a Rodev Shalom. That's what you have to be doing. That's something to think about. It's interesting also what the Gemara says. The Gemara in Tainus, the Mishnah in Tainus, says, Mishnichnas of Mamati B'Simcha. If you go to Daf later, Gemara says, Kishem, interesting words, Kishem, just like Mishnichnas of Mamati B'Simcha, Kach B'Mishnichnas Other, Marvin B'Simcha. Just like in Av, we diminish our Simcha. In Other, we maximize our Simcha. So I always wonder what is the concept of Kishem, just like. So I don't know really a pshat, but I'll tell you something I was thinking about. I was thinking that maybe the Av is a sad month, even though the halachas of the 9 days end at Tishrei B'Av, but Av is a bad month for the Jews. It's a bad month. The other is a great month for the Jews, and it's not just the day of Purim and not the day of Tishrei B'Av. It's a concept. There's less simcha in Av, and there's more simcha, and the Gemara has to say that because we like somebody with the thing that you sent the other day that we're Litvaks, we want to be Matan B'Simcha. Really, the Gemara wants to be Marvin B'Simcha. Really, it's really other. Most of the year it should be like other. It's 1 month that we're Marvin B'Simcha, right? And other we have extra Simcha, but we're always B'Simcha. So I think the Gemara is telling us that it's a time of Churban. The whole month is a time of Churban, just like the whole month of Adar is a time of Purim, even though Purim may pass. But Lamais, the whole month is a time of Purim. Something to think about. Okay. I want to get a Rambam. We'll have to step up for 1 second, but I want to go to a few other things. Another thing about the yahrzeit of Aaron is Gemara says Shkula misasan shel tzadikim Sreifas beis halokenim. The death of tzaddikim is comparable, is like the burning of the Beis Hamikdash. So one of the reasons we mention it on we think about it, and the Torah says that clearly he died on Rosh Chodesh Av, is to realize it's part of the Churban is the fact that the tzaddik dies. I want to share another idea with you that I heard several years ago from Rav Hillel Zaks when he spoke to Yeshiva Or David guys. Hillel Zaks So Yeshiva of Yeshiva Knesset Yisrael, also Yeshiva Rosh Yeshiva Tevron, and he was the grandson of the Chofetz Chaim. And he said a gewaldige thing to Yeshiva 5 years ago, and I think it's worth repeating it. I always like to repeat it. Gemara says, Shlosh Neviim is not b'loshen echa. 3 Neviim gave a nevuah with loshen echa. Happens to be 2 of them we're going to read about on Shabbos. And Motzei Shabbos, we're reading the 3rd one because it's Tishrei Motzei Shabbos. The first one, the first loshen echa, and the truth is, it's an interesting chazal because the loshen echa is used more times in the Tanakh, but there are 3 Neviim that are discussing the Churban, obviously, that use loshen echa. So I'm going to come back to Moshe Rabbeinu for a second at the end because I want to discuss Moshe Rabbeinu a little bit. But the two we're going to read Shabbos is Shayahu Hanavi says Eicha Haisel Kazayna. The Yerushalayim became like a zona, like a harlot, like a prostitute. Yerushalayim become totally disconnected with everything. Became like a zona, and that's but the korban's going to happen because of that. The churban is going to happen because she's like a zona. She's totally disconnected, totally irreverent of any halacha. She's a zona, right? Yerushalayim, and the word Shabbos is already Yirmiyahu is lamenting. Heicha Yoshva Badad. Now Yerushalayim is by itself. There's nobody likes it. Nobody's with it, and so all the things are obviously the churban. Moshe Rabbeinu said the Eicha that we're going to read the Shabbos. All he says is, how can I bear myself with the troubles and your burden and your arguments? How can I do it myself? He's not discussing the Churban at all. So why is this the third Lashon Eicha? That's what Rav Saxon's kasha. Why was it with the Lashon of Moshe Rabbeinu put in with the Lashon of Yirmiyahu and with Yeshayahu? They're speaking about a terrible churban. It's going to have their kaisro. Yeshayahu is predicting the churban because it's kaisro zona. The Yirmiyahu is discussing it's badad. We're all alone because of the churban. What does Moshe Rabbeinu have to do with it? So he says, if we look at a Rashi, 2 psukim later, Rashi says an interesting thing. Rashi explains that lashon of leicha, and he says, I'll read it to you exactly from inside. He says, find it, I just had it here. He says, Shichladatem you decided on this system. The system was we're going to. I can't do it myself. Moshe Rabbeinu says we're going to divide up to Meya. We'll have different levels. People. There'll be the people who charge 1,000. People who charge 500. 100. Says Rashi says you decided as a davar lahanoschem. You like the system because of your own enjoyment. Why? You should have said when it comes to the system, Rabbeinu Moshe Rabbeinu. Who does it better to learn from? From you or from your Talmidim? Lo mimcha, we just want to learn with you. Why do we want to disconnect with you? Why do we want to disconnect? Why are we separating ourselves? Rishon has a tain on them. The Eicha is a tain on them. Tain is you want to be disconnected from your Rebbeim, from your Sarah. And that's really, Rav Hillel says, that's really the beginning of the Churban. The Churban is we want to disconnect with our connection to our Rebbeim, connection with our Masorah, connection with the Torah. And that really brings the Churban. I saw in Rav Pinkus's book, Shimon Pinkus is all these firm about the 3 weeks. He said an interesting story about his father-in-law, and it really this point. If Mamish made this point to me, brought it home very well. His point is he said that his father-in-law was learning in the Mir, talking about pre-war Mir, and he says in those days to be a Shiva Bacher was not a pleasant thing. People didn't appreciate you, and he says when he said he used to walk on the street, people would make fun of him. They would throw things at him. Jewish people. He would go to the store. They make him wait at the end of the line. Learning Torah, being in yeshiva was not. We think about Shivas Miri, Shivas Labat. It was great, and that was one of the things the Alter Labat wanted to do was to rebuild the yeshiva person, the yeshiva bacher, the yeshiva man into somebody more chashuv. But the people in those days didn't think he was a chashuv. He's not working. What is he doing? He's a bench fecker. He sits on a stool the whole day. What does he do? And that's really what Rashi's saying over here. They didn't appreciate what it means to be more connected. They were a little bit connected. They were learning from his Talmidim, and in later generations in Nebuch in Europe, they didn't even want to learn anything. But that's the beginning of the Churban, and we saw it. I'm not going to say that was the reason for the Churban in Europe, but there were a lot of reasons for the Churban in Europe. But that was one of the reasons: the disconnection with Limud Torah, with the Rebbeim. And it's interesting, so that's the lotion of Eicha. That's why Moshe Rabbeinu's Eicha is one of the three Nevi'im. Even though you read it, you say, what does that have to do with the Korban? Because then Rabbi Zak said that's the beginning of a Korban. The beginning of the Korban is we want to remove ourselves with that distance a little bit from our Rebbeim. There's another interesting idea I want to share with you. I want to get a Rambam. I'll take it 30 seconds. Report. I heard on Tisha B'Av night from Moshe Shapiro's Atzal, and didn't it say it exactly like but I think he meant to say it exactly like I said it. It's an interesting thing, the Lashon of the Rambam in Hilchos Tisha B'Av, in Hilchos Tammuz, right? It's in the last parak. So he says Tisha B'Av, the Lashon of the Rambam, reading the Rambam, Tisha B'Av, Chamishim Devarim Yirabov. 5 things happen in Tisha B'Av. Right? The first thing we know, that was the Meraglim. We just read about it a few weeks ago. The Meraglim, the Avera, prevented us from going there to Yisrael. The whole door had to die, right? The Charav Beis Abayis Berishona V'Shniya. The Beis Hamikdash, first one and second, was destroyed. Yir Gedolah Beitar. You know, in the rebellion that was about 60 or 75 years after the Churban, there was a rebellion that was led by Bar Kochba in the city of Beitar, right? Right, there were a lot of Jews, thousands, hundreds of thousands of Israel, right? There was a great melech that was Bar Kochba, right? Many, it says they thought it was Mashiach, at least the Rabbi Akiva thought it was Mashiach. The novel B'Yad Romi, the Nargul Kulam, right? There was on V'Haisit Tzara Gedoyla, Kamar Churban Bayis, a great tzara that happened on Tisha B'Av, like the Churban Bayis. Ubo Bayom, this is, and Moshe Shapiro didn't point this out, but it's interesting. Ubo Bayom Hamucha the Peranios. And that day that was set aside for bad tidings, for Peranios, Tunis Ruvas HaRasha, right? HaRasha is Hechos of Zvivov, right? He's Choresh. He plows the area of the Beis HaMikdash in the area, the Kayim HaShenemar Tzion Kesad Tikarish. To do the pasuk, Tzion will be plowed like a field. So Stama, there's a kasha. Why over here the Rambam is fetching? This it's a sefer of halacha. Rambam is very medayik in what he says, and all of a sudden the boba yom muchad leprani. So what's the big deal? Okay, there's 2 churban Beis Hamikdash, and people died. There was the Meraglim. There was Beitar. Big deal. So he plowed the Makam HaMikdash. What's the big deal? Why is this the worst thing? And you hear the Rambam has to fetch boba yom muchad lepranios. So Moshe Shapiro said a Gavaldig concept. He didn't say it to answer the Rambam, but I'm thinking he was really answering the Rambam. That's how he spoke. He said a Gavaldig thing. He says, "The Kai Mashinemar Tzion Tzion will be plowed like a field." He said the Gemara says, again, there's this thing. The Gemara says, "Lo ka Avraham." The Beis Hamikdash is not like Avraham. Avraham said it's Har Maria. It's Lo ka Avraham Shekari leHar. It's not like Avraham called it a mountain. V'lo Ki Yitzchak, not like Yitzchak, Shekarli Sada. Sada, when he meets Rivka, he was the Siach V'Suach B'Sada. He goes out to meditate in the fields. Sada, right? Elak Yaakov Shekarli Bayis. Yaakov Avinu calls it Beis El when he has the dream of the Malachim and he puts the stone there. Beis El. This is Beis of Hashem. Beis El. He calls it Beis El. This is a bias. So it's not a har, and it's not a Sada. It's a bias. So Moshe Shapiro is a Gavaldig thing. He says, what's the difference between a har and a bayis and a tzaddim? A har, anybody goes. You want to go for a hike on a mountain. You go on a hike on a mountain. You want to walk around the field. Anybody walks around. Anybody. It's a field. It's open field, open place. Bayis, if I don't want you to come to my house, I don't let you in. Bayis is a private place. It's not a bayis. It's not a har and not a tzaddim. The Chalal tells down. Person, it's a place for the Jewish people. It's a bias where we connect to the Rebbeinu Shalom in a very real connected way. And that's what as we're saying. What Tunis Rufus or Russia was doing was saying, you know what? My Zayda, Esav was right. And your Zayda, Yaakov was wrong. My Zayda, Esav said it's a har. It's a sada. I'm turning it back into a sada. And it's not a bias. And that's part of the Churban. The Churban is we take away the special uniqueness of Klal Yisrael, the special relationship we have with Hashem. He made it into a sada again. It should be a bias, and he made it into a sada. And that's the terrible thing that happened. I want to just conclude with another idea. It's also based on what Rosh Shapiro said, but I'm taking a little bit out of the context. The Gemara, very interesting Gemara of Bucharis. The Chachmei Atuna, you know what they were? They were the great philosophers of Athens, the great Greek philosophers, and the Chachamim had a debate. And the entire debate is very strange, but I'm going to mention one of the things that Marsha says. They had a debate. The debate was the Chachmei Atuna brought out an egg, and they asked the Chachamim, was this egg laid by a white chicken or a black chicken? And the Chachamim come back and they take out a piece of cheese. And they said, is this cheese from the milk of a white goat or a black goat? And that was the discussion. Very, very enigmatic discussion, but the Marsha says a pshat. Marsha says, and I'm going to close with this for a very good reason. The Marsha says that the gestation period of an egg is 3 weeks. What the Chachmei Atuna were telling the Jews, what they were saying to them, is you guys are in a rut. You got 3 weeks, Shiva Tammuz till Tishrei B'Av, where you're punished, you're going to the base makes you destroyed. Then you go back and you do tshuva, Rosh Hashana till Hashana Rabbah, you do tshuva. Rosh Hashana starts, just to finish on Rabbah. And you're in a rut. Every year it's the same thing. You go by bad news, good news. You're never going to get out of the rut. You guys are just in a rut. You're not getting any better. You're not changing. You're never going to get out of this. You'll mess up. You'll do tshuva. Then you'll mess up again and you'll do tshuva. Tshuva. I saw an interesting thing the other day. That it's an aside, but it's an interesting thing. That famous thing we just read about it in Eliyahu Hanavi's confrontation with the Nevi Abal. Right? They had the confrontation with the Nevi Abal. And they get to this cow, and they couldn't get to bring a fire down. He brings the fire down, and everybody says Hashem Elokim, Hashem Elokim. They realize Baal is sheker, and Hashem is really in charge. So I didn't know this, but it's interesting. I think I heard it from Y.Y. Jacobson. He says Achav was the king. You know, he's trying to. His wife was Isabel, who was really bad news. She was really a witch, and she wanted the Nevi Abal to take over, and the Baal to take over. So he goes back and he says, listen, we lost Eliyahu, it's finished. So she said an unbelievable thing. She says, don't worry, that's what they today, but tomorrow they'll go back to Baal. So they're only here today. So that's what really what Tunis Rov is doing. It's not a bias, it's just a soda. We're all together. We have to remember it's a bias. We're waiting for the Beis HaMikdash, the bias, and the regular person in the world with no connection to everybody in a special way. We have a bias, we have a special only us to get in. Anyway, but anyway, the 3 weeks. So we're in this rut. That's what the Chazal is saying. That's what the Chachmei Atuna is saying. So what does Chazal answer? They take out a piece of cheese. What kind of goat was it? A black goat or a white goat? Rashah says they're hinting to really what's supposed to go on. There's supposed to be 2 goats on Yom Kippur. You know, they brought one to Azaz and one to Hashem, right? There's an avodah on Yom Kippur that you break the cycle. The avodah Yom Kippur should break the cycle. Yom Kippur, real tshuva will break the cycle. If we would ever really do the tshuva properly, and that's really, we talk, an interesting idea. We have 3 weeks now, 3 Shabbos, 3rd Shabbat coming up, Shiva de Pranios, and there's 7 weeks of Nechamta, of consolation, and the 8th week is tshuva, Shabbos tshuva. And that's really the consolation. Consolation is if we use the goats, if Yom Kippur voter would be right, and we would break the cycle. And it's a very interesting thing. Rabbi Shmuel said that there's 21 days, but we have a 22nd day. Simchas Torah, Simchas Torah, the day after Hashana Rabbah is the happiest day for us, because we realize we'll break the cycle. So, in other words, we're in now in a time of Avelis. We're in this period of 21 days, but if we use the period of 21 days that are coming up, Hashana Rabbah, we'll get the Mitzvah Hashem to Simchas Torah, and that'll change everything. And that's the bracha I have to give to everybody, to myself and to Klal Yisrael, that in Mitzvah Hashem will do the Avelis right, and we'll feel for the Beis HaMikdash, And I saw, it's one of the versions saying that it's not just enough. We don't eat meat and we don't wash clothes. We don't. We're going to sit on the floor and take off our shoes. It's not enough. I know is to feel it. That it's just not going through the motions. It's to really to really feel out what's going on. We should use these days to really feel it, but it should bring us a realization that I got to get my act in order because this has to change. We have to get a base of English back. We have to be special again. We have to go in and serve the show the right way. And Amir Hashem will do the Avelas. We'll really feel it, and that should inspire us that it's time for a change. And Amir Hashem will get to that change. I'm glad everybody joined us. And Amir Hashem will do this again.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Good. Thank you very, very much.
Joining us.
Pleasure as always.
Good to see
Shkaya, Rabbi.
John
Thank you,
Gilman.
Rabbi.
I just see your picture, but I don't see you in person. But that's okay.
No, that is his video.
I'm here. It's just not as pretty as the picture.
Well, now you're